Okay, this is LeroyDiesel.com. I want to show you guys some things about the engine oil cooler kits and the engine oil cooler hose kits that I sell. Mainly this is actually going to be for the hose kits, but it does apply to the full kit that I sell also. And the main question I get is what size ports are above the oil filter, and sometimes I don't know the answer because I don't know if you've got a new engine or a different engine that's been swapped in, but as a rule 92 through 96 will have 3/8 inch ports or directly above or very, very close to the oil filter. I'll show you that here in a second. 97 and newer had the HO oil cooler and would have 1/2 inch ports. But the tricky thing is 97 was a cutoff year, and so if you have a 97, an early 97, you may have 3/8 inch ports on your block. So you would need to confirm what size you have if you have a 97 truck. Let me show you where these fittings are. Let me zoom in all the way. Oh, by the way, this is obviously it's a 6.5 diesel that I've got here. It's mounted on an engine crate, and so for display purposes it's much easier for me to show you on this. You would actually be on your back looking straight up underneath the driver's side exhaust manifold. So what it is back here you got the oil filter, the blue oil filter there. And then right above it you've got that brass fitting, and further forward is another one. And above those, at the highest point, is a third port, which normally is just going to have a plug in it. But if you're doing a brand new install, for some reason you didn't have an engine oil cooler to begin with, then that port needs to be blocked off, and you'll use the two lower ports, the one furthest back above the oil filter, and then the one further forward and just slightly higher. So again, just use those two, and it doesn't matter which one you use for the inlet or the outlet to the cooler itself. So you can run either hose to either side of the engine oil cooler, which I'll show you here in a second. So these happen to be 3/8 inch ports. I can tell, I've been doing it long enough, I can just look at it and eyeball it. 1/2 inch would be slightly bigger than those. But that's the main thing you need to know, is which ports you have, and then you can, and also the engine oil cooler itself up on the core support, which one do you have? So let me set up this little temporary table here. What I've got here is an engine oil cooler. I've got a 4x4 adapter. I've got a mock-up hose just so I can show you a little bit. The fitting, well, let me get everything up here. This is another fitting, a 45-degree angle fitting, and then yet again another fitting. I've got, the kits will come with two. It just depends on which one you have, but you'll only get two of these style fittings. Okay. What I've got here is I've got a very, very unique fitting that we actually machine here in-house, and it's this fitting. It's number 10 JIC on this side. Let me throw this tripod up real quick. Bear with me. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you've got number 10 JIC, which mates with the oil cooler hoses, like that, and that'll be in the engine oil cooler. But the unique thing is this is a metric thread, and it's also got an O-ring here, and this whole piece is made out of stainless steel. Very, very unique. I think, well, I know we're the only ones in the world that make this, and the advantage to this is a stock factory engine oil cooler. And if there's nothing wrong with your oil cooler, just that the typical hoses leak, the factory hoses, and all you need to do is replace your hoses, well then why do you want to spend more money to replace this cooler when it's perfectly good? So that's where this fitting comes in. And it's specifically designed for this application, and it just threads up in there. Well, first, it's a good idea to put a little coat of oil on this O-ring. Thread that up in there. Just get it where it's snug, and then you're going to put a wrench on there and just snug it up. Always, anytime you're turning anything on this end of the engine oil cooler, make sure you have a backup wrench on here. The kit also comes with a 45-degree swivel adapter. This end swivels, and this allows you, once you have this thing up in the grill, you can just get this thing basically hand tight, and it allows you to swivel this in any direction. Usually it's going to be centered to the truck or to the cooler. It's going to go center and slightly forward in order to clear the core support. Then obviously the hose would make its connection. What I like to do is, let me get this set up here where I can thread that on there. I like to get this thing on here. Go ahead and I usually will go ahead and tighten this joint up first so that it's at the proper angle of where it just naturally wants to fall. And then I'll come in here, I'll get a backup wrench on the fitting, and then I'll go ahead and tighten this one down, because right now it allows it to swivel until you tighten this down. Once you tighten that down, it's locked down, because this one will be tight before you tighten this one. That's just the way I like to do it. You can do it however you want to do it. I'm going to pull this off real quick. One of the differences, and I'll show you this fitting is exactly like this fitting, but if you have a 97 or newer HO oil pump on your truck, then the cooler is different too. And so for that reason I make this adapter also. We make these also. It's also got an O-ring on it, and it's designed to go in just like you saw me do this one. An easy way that you can identify, this is another little tip for you, is on your block, 99.9% of the time, if you've got 3/8" ports on your block, you're going to have a oil cooler that looks just like this. Let me show you on this side. It'll look just like this. So you can tell how it's got the hex portion all the way up to the cooler itself. On the HO coolers, all the ones I've ever seen were more of a bell shape that this would screw into, and then it kind of tapered down to the cooler. So it kind of made a bell shape, and that would give you 1/2" ports on your block. So let me cover that one more time. I don't know if that was confusing. If you've got 3/8" ports on your block, 99.9% of the time you're going to have this engine oil cooler, and it's got the flat bosses on the hexes, or on the hex here on this fitting, that go all the way up to the oil cooler. If you've got the HO oil cooler in your truck, which would normally be 97 and newer, you're going to have a larger fitting, and that fitting screws into the oil cooler, but because it's bigger, it then bells back down and reduces to go into the cooler. So hopefully that makes sense. One last thing is I also sell the 4x4 seals, the 4x4 oil filter adapter seal kits. This particular one is off of a 93. This is what I call a banjo bolt, although technically it may have another name. But on the 4x4s, you have this adapter, and it would bolt with this bolt up to where your oil filter would normally go, and it basically just turns your oil filter 90 degrees so that you have clearance for your drive shaft. And so that's all that is. I'll set that aside. But the main thing that you need to know or want to know is the difference in my seal kits is if you, the 92 to 96, most of them are like this style, which means you're going to have a copper crush washer. This is, maybe if you can hear that, I don't know. But that's metal. It's a copper crush washer. And that goes underneath the head of the bolt here. And when you tighten this down into here, it creates a seal. In my kit, you also get these two O-rings, and you'll get the large O-ring that seals the adapter to the engine block. On the 97 and newer, instead of having a copper crush washer, they machine a groove here for an O-ring, and then you'll also have just two more different size O-rings on that particular style. But I sell both styles, and hopefully this gives you an idea of which one you have. So that's really about it. If you have any questions, one more quick thing, as I'll just show you this, is on the engine block itself, those fittings I showed you at the very, very first of the video, the kit comes with fittings, 90-degree fittings. This happens to be 1/2 inch, but if your kit calls for 3/8, you'll get the 3/8. You just screw that into the block, point the JIC or the flare forward, and it might be pointed slightly down, and then you're going to route the cooler hoses kind of along the oil pan, but you're going to just route it in the most direct and efficient route that you can take to get this thing up to the core support area. On a 93 4x4, for example, the factory lines go back up to the back of the driver's side fender well and kind of make this crazy trip to get up to the core support into the engine oil cooler. This kit reroutes those hoses, so just ignore the factory routing. You're just going to take from this fitting and just go as straight as possible up to the front. You may have to go underneath a motor mount, whatever it takes. But I've sold hundreds of these kits and no problems yet, but people still do ask me that question. So if you do have any questions, by all means, feel free to give me a call. And my phone number is 713-408-0423. You can also look me up at LeroyDiesel.com, and it's Leroy Diesel, like the fuel.com. Have a good day. Thank you.